Hello friends, welcome to Electronisclap's Insights Conversation today. Today, we have Murali Srinivasa, who is the founder CEO at Lion Circuit, which is an AI-driven electronics manufacturer. Prior to founding Lion Circuit, he was the CEO of Create Labs and was associated with Texas Instruments for nearly half a decade. He was also the co-founder and director of Li2 Technologies Private Limited. Today, we will discuss with Murali about the PCB industry and the underlying challenges, opportunities, and scope. We will also discuss about the bleeding edge 3D PCB. So welcome Murali to the Insights Conversation with Electronisclap.
Thanks, Anamika. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, Murali, let us start with understanding the PCB industry. So, since its evolution, PCB industry has changed a lot, and with the recent growing data and shrinking size of PCBs, where do you see the industry going in the future?
Definitely, I think PCB industry has come a long way in terms of the technology itself. But however, some of the customer interaction has been stuck in the last century. There has been no progress ever made since the 1900s. It's almost stuck in last century. So I think there are a lot of new things coming up in PCB industry and in general, all the industries. This is bound to happen. I think new industrial revolution is on its way and we are already in it. And India is going to be definitely leading this in the next decade. And some of the big trends that we see in PCB industry specifically is that, the density increases. We have more compact PCBs coming in. We have, the yield optimization related tools. We have AI-based QA tools that are coming in. Also, there are a lot of new improvements in the way factories interact with the customers. And Lion Circuits is in forefront of this, pioneering some of the tools for interaction and collaboration across team members and across between the factory floor and the end customers, and helping them optimize bill of materials, PCB and assembly all in one platform. So essentially, it becomes very easy for anybody to go from prototype to production. In this decade, I think this is definitely going to accelerate more.
Okay, so Murali, there is a lot of talks about the growing 3D in the PCB industry. So how do you see this evolving, becoming a reality, and what are the scopes and benefits with this technology?
Right. See, I think 3D modeling and 3D, visual inspection has been there for quite some time. But I think what has happened now is that because of the computation, cloud computation that is available across different, worldwide servers, right? So it becomes very easy for this technology to kind of reach the end customers and also help the factory floor in many ways. So one, I think definitely, from a rendering point of view, before a customer orders a particular PCB, so he could really visualize how his end product would look like, right? Including all the component heights and the entire design, so that the mechanical iteration because of mechanical changes can be minimized as much as possible, right? And that is from a customer standpoint. And from a factory floor standpoint, what happens is when we are doing assembly, so the yields can be improved by doing 3D visual AOI inspection, by helping our factory floor team members to kind of see where, if there are any, for example, the things that are come to my mind is like thermal dissipation, right? So how does the thermal dissipation actually kind of look like in a 3D scenario from a PCB standpoint, and how that would finally affect in terms of the end product, right? And so these are all some of the things that would help and reduce the number of iterations and accelerate prototype to production.
Okay, so what are some of the challenges in monetizing this 3D PCB? How long will it take for this technology to become a reality? How is it going to benefit even the users of this technology, like manufacturers like you?
Right. I think definitely benefits. So there are a lot of challenges. So if you're talking about 3D PCBs, which are basically one is the rendering part, right? So the other part is basically building PCBs from a additive or subtractive manufacturing kind of a technique. So that's slightly far away. That's something that technology is something that has evolved, but it is still going to take some time for it to eventually be a mainstream technology for building PCBs as such, if you might call like that. So, for example, one technique where you start with a copper clad board and start to mill PCBs, right? So instead of etching PCBs chemically, you kind of can mill PCBs, right? And that technique has its own limitations, and in terms of multi-layer, in terms of single layer, for a double layer it becomes slightly complicated in terms of doing plated through holes between the top and bottom layer. So for multi-layer, it's still in a very nascent stage, right? So however, I think the 3D models and 3D PCBs from a software standpoint, from a for example, using some of these 3D models of the PCBs for debugging in real time using augmented reality is something that I see that it's going to be there in everyone's desk in the next 5 years, right? So in the next 5 years, I can totally see how people would use AR in in their labs to debug circuits, and help in assisting them to debug some of these test scenarios and in the lab. So two aspects. One is the software aspect. One is the actual building aspect, right? So the software aspect of 3D PCB is definitely going to transform in the next decade. However, the actual manufacturability from a additive or subtractive manufacturing standpoint, I think that still has long way to come.
Okay. So you spoke about the AI in the PCB industry, how that's going to happen. Could you also cite certain examples and the possibilities that the AI and PCB together can bring, especially when it comes to 3D PCB?
Right. So see, again, I think the cloud computing has enabled a lot of is unleashing a lot of applications in the recent years. Because AI has been also there from almost 2-3 decades. It's not new. It's just that because of the low computation power that is now available, which is accessible for anyone, ubiquitous. I mean, that's what is enabling AI in a lot of industries, right? And in our industry specifically speaking, it's going to be helping in mostly yield improvements, right, and factory floor optimization. So how can we improve more of the factory productivity? How can we best utilize our capacity and reduce the defects in the factory floor, right? So essentially, yield improvements and factory floor utilization is where I see AI being really transformational in PCB industry, and in general for any manufacturing industry. I think these are the two areas that it's going to really bring some transformations, and these transformations will look from a consumer standpoint, from an end user standpoint. These will translate into lower costs, higher faster delivery times, and better quality, right? And those are the three pillars of manufacturing, and that's going to be transformative from an AI standpoint. And so this, along with 3D modeling, will definitely even more accelerate these the three pillars, which is cost, quality, and lead time. And that's where I see the industry going towards.
Okay. So, is there any challenge that you foresee when it comes to integrating these technologies together for the organizations, whether it is managing the flow, whether it's manufacturing the electronics equipments, or whatever it is? So, do you see any kind of a challenge? Do you see where all these industries can work together? Also, if you can just talk about, is there any kind of a skill gap that exists that needs to be filled when it comes to using these technologies together?
Right. See, I think the biggest thing when we started AI, for in the PCB industry was mainly, just like putting together some of these very existing kind of technologies, and how do we really transform, and how do we actually solve some of those problems in a faster and better approach, better way using AI, right? So one of the main thing is like like the AI models and resources itself, right? So the skill set for the knowledge basically of people who have the availability of people in our area of industrial science is basically is what we felt lacking. People who come from a traditional AI background would not have a domain expertise of any industry specifically, even forget about PCB, any specific industry, right? So bridging that gap of having a domain expertise, and along with a machine learning engineer and machine learning scientist, combining these two people in a team and bringing that kind of an working getting the team working together was the biggest challenge, right? So one come from a domain expertise, the other comes from the actual machine learning knowledge. So having both of them work together and kind of implement transformational solutions is a bigger challenge, so as to say. But I think once any team who would like to put together AI solutions for their industries as well, I think focusing on domain expertise, having good machine learning scientists in their team, and few applications engineers who could try out different things, train the different models. I think these are some of the 3 to 4 critical areas what a machine learning or an AI team in any industrial AI company would really need.
Okay, so do you see this trend globally? How is this going to impact the progress of the industry? Because we see that the semiconductor industry is going to be a big one. The entire world is preparing. Several countries are working on making themselves one of the hub of semiconductor manufacturing. So do you see this talent, this slow growth of the PCB industry when it comes to transformation is going to impact the entire semiconductor industry?
Definitely, I think from a global standpoint, there are a lot more talent, AI talent, coming into the industrial segment, right? So when I look at a lot of companies and startups coming from Bay Area, there are a lot of investments that are going into industrial companies, right? So these are not software as a service, pure software as a service company, but these are basically industrial companies focusing on solving hardcore industrial problems and using some of the new technologies, right? And I see a lot of huge number of investments going into these industry 4.0 type of companies, going into the hard tech from a US standpoint. And this trend is definitely going towards where people want to reshore manufacturing into the US, and from some of the Southeast Asian countries, right?
Yeah.
But I think from an Indian market standpoint, there's a huge opportunity, and I really truly believe that there is a huge gap between the investments that are coming into this market and the available talent and solutions that Indians could actually bring upon into the market, right? So I really wish a lot of Indian VC ecosystem would basically open up, and start investing in industrial companies, because I see a lot of startups, very good, high quality startups in India, right? Coming from Bangalore, some of the northern states, and Bombay, Pune region, very high class companies, right? Industrial companies. But I think they are underfunded. They're all underfunded. We need to start investing more in hardware companies in India, so that some of these transformations can happen along the way, and this will definitely help companies that are already there in India, the semicon companies there in India. So in order to build this ecosystem, right? So the kind of new technology companies that are coming up in India, along with all the existing semicon companies, I think working together would make them would take the Indian manufacturing industry to the next level, right? I think a lot of cross collaboration needs to happen, and a lot more investment needs to happen from an Indian standpoint. I think it's time that Indian investment industry basically open up their eyes and start investing in this sector from an Indian market standpoint. And it's very clear in the last 1 year that millions and billions of dollars have gone into AI based industrial companies in the US, right? And that's a leading indicator of where the market is going towards.
Okay. So do you see any such investor across the globe who are more inclined towards investing into technologies like these that would actually help startups?
Yeah, there are, in fact, actually, there are very good, very dedicated, focused, investment firms in US, specifically in the Bay Area and also now in the Midwest. For example, to name a few, there is something called Root Ventures. They are very focused on hardware. Avidan Ross, heads the venture, and he's been very passionate hardware tinkerer and builder, and he invests in a lot of companies, and one of the companies he has invested is also building a AI based visual inspection machine, enabling US manufacturers and OEMs to work with Chinese production floors in a very easy way based on visual inspection, right? So AI based visual inspection. And that's just one example. And in just I came across one company where they are building a ground up compressor. A compressor is basically heart of any industry. Any industry, you take any industry, they'll have one compressor machine in their industry, right? And this air compressor has been has not gone through any transformation since almost 2-3 decades. It's been the same. It's been the same principle. No new technologies, no new innovation. But just a couple of years back, there is a very new company coming in Bay Area who is redoing the entire compressor. The way the compressor has been thought about, how do you optimize, how do you increase. So these are basically engineers from high-tech companies using new technologies and implementing in solving hardcore science problems, right? And if you want to think about these kind of transformation technologies being funded in India, it's almost impossible. And that is what needs to change in India, right? So we need to basically there is a lot of positivity, there is a lot of talent in India who would want to actually start working on these hardcore technologies. But I think the investment ecosystem has to also start really investing in such companies to enable hardware revolution in India. And I see that a lot of non-traditional investors, in India are inclined towards manufacturing. For example, one of my biggest inspiration is Sridhar Vembu, who recently also got a Padma Shri award. And I've been more open about it. And one of the reason I moved back to India was basically Sridhar Vembu, right? So he's been such an inspiration, and starting Zoho in India, and expanding into US and a lot, pretty much so many countries, and building such a large organization takes decades, right? So recently Zoho celebrated 25 years, and we are also excited about it. And 2.5 decades is not a small time, and that is the time it takes to make huge transformation, right? And now Sridhar openly talks about manufacturing and how it is very important for Indian ecosystem to for the manufacturing to leapfrog. And it's very, very, very rightly said, because that's the need of an hour for the next 10 years in India. And I really wish that we don't kind of always lag from the US investor kind of a mindset, because it's always there that whatever happens in US after 3-4 years is what come when Indian actually ecosystem picks it up. I really hope that that is not the case this time, and kind of we as a team, we should really work towards enabling these manufacturing technologies faster from an Indian standpoint. But from a global standpoint, I think US is definitely making a lot of investments in this sector.
So Murali, let us talk about the flexible PCBs. What do you see the opportunities that lie with the flexible PCBs? How is this segment going to transform the entire electronics industry?
All right. So flexible PCBs, I think, from a technology standpoint, there are a lot of innovation that are happening, new materials coming in, right? So, from all the way from FR4, polyamide, there are now new materials that are coming up for flexible PCBs. And, definitely, I think wearable segment is one market which really kind of leapfrogged with this particular technology, right? So we are able to see a lot of wearables because of flexible PCBs, and I think a lot of new innovation are also happening because of flexible PCBs, right? So a lot of new sensors which were not possible before are now possible because of the flexible PCBs, right? So in fact, one of the a new sensing technology. This was part of Texas Instruments that we kind of spearheaded this technology called inductive sensing. One of the applications of inductive sensing was basically in wearables, and that was possible because of flexible PCBs. And as an engineer, we could not have achieved that without flexible PCBs. So so there are a lot of new applications that are being possible because of flexible PCBs, and Indian ecosystem is still in that way nascent. Mainly because I think the manufacturing capacity and availability is not that matured here yet on the flexible PCBs, but I think that is another area that I'm hoping to see a huge transformation in this decade as well.
So what are some of the trends that you foresee in the PCB industry, maybe in terms of technology, maybe in terms of some other innovation that's going to happen within the industry?
Right. So I see a lot of automation, both software and hardware automation being done in this industry, right? I think from an so if I have to talk about from two standpoints, one is from a global standpoint and from a local Indian standpoint, right? From an Indian standpoint, I think we have a long way to go in terms of automation. It's high time that manufacturers in India acknowledge and embrace some of the software automation at the least, because these are something which are not very capital intensive. We have some of the initiatives from our organization. We have something called PCB QGen, which is an automated coating tool that helps manufacturers. So that's an example, but there are a lot of other companies who are also providing software automation for Indian manufacturers. I think it's time that people start embracing these and moving forward aggressively in this segment. From a global standpoint, I think also there are a lot of hardware automation that is going to happen, right? So wherein we will start seeing more turnkey manufacturers being located under one roof, right? For example, Land Circuits is one roof. We have turnkey, that is PCB fabrication, assembly, and sourcing, component sourcing, so that it becomes very easy for end user to start manufacturing the entire board. Because at the end of the day, just the bare PCB or bare assembly, just the assembly is not helpful, right? So what matters is how quickly can you actually make a PCB which is functional from design standpoint, from design to having functional board in the hand. That entire turnaround time is what matters. And from a global standpoint, I see both in US and in the Southeast Asian markets, more companies are now going towards providing turnkey solutions, turnkey offerings under one roof, and that will lead to a lot of automation, especially, for example, for proto builds. When you have very limited time, the changeover time for any components on an assembly line is the biggest problem, right? And I see a lot of innovation and automation coming in this particular area for reducing the changeover time of an assembly line, so that more proto builds can be done, more group building will be done, so that the cost optimizations are there. And I think this is one common trend that I see throughout the world that is happening. And I think we can also expect some of the machines in the last decade that came up, like laser direct imaging, also being more commonly used in in a wider market. So LDI machines, laser direct imaging machines, is something that's also will basically have a larger impact in this decade globally as well.
So, Murali, before we conclude, would you like to add something to our conversation?
So I think this is India's manufacturing decade. Let's all be excited about it and start working towards it. And there is no doubt that India is in a extremely good position. Never before in the history we were living in such a time where there is such a huge opportunity ahead of us. And all the issues that are happening currently from a supply chain semiconductor shortage standpoint is actually beneficial for Indian companies. If you look at it, if you play right, you can actually some of the manufacturers from India can start addressing some of the global problems and be leader in this segment, right? And so we are basically definitely very excited, and we are looking forward for some of our strategic partnerships with larger manufacturers in India to take Lion circuits globally. And so we are very excited for this decade in India, Anamika.
That's nice. You rightly said, when you play right, you are going to move to the right direction. So
Yes.
that is where not just the Indian sector, but the entire world has to move, looking at the kind of shortage that we are dealing, the kind of disruptions that's happening because of the semiconductor and the associated industries. So we have a lot of opportunity. Just moving in the right direction at the right time is really important.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Murali, for taking out time to speaking with us. And it was quite an insightful discussion about the PCB industry. We look forward to speaking to you in the future as well.
It's pleasure is mine. Thanks, Anamika. Thanks.
Thank you. And friends, for more such innovative videos, informative videos, do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and do press the bell button. We would be happy to hear from you and get your feedback on the interviews and the topics that you would like Electronisclap to discuss with experts from the electronic industry. So stay connected and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.